What is up, my Squirtleites? It is I, your king, welcoming you back to Destiny. Yes, Destiny 2 has finally been officially revealed. I mean, we got a trailer and all that, but now we have the gameplay, now we have details on what's going on and all that stuff, and I'm going to be sharing all of that with you today. All of the changes, big and small, that are being made with the release of Destiny 2, which comes out September 8th. So, first things first. Let's talk about PC Destiny 2. So yes, Destiny 2 is confirmed coming to PC. It is coming with an uncapped frame rate at 4K resolution support, 21:9 support for those who like the ultra-wide, and FOV sliders, as well as SLI support, which allows you to have multiple GPUs to the same input. However, it is not coming to Steam. Yes, Destiny is an Activision IP, and Activision, also being partnered with Blizzard, is keeping Destiny 2 on the Battle.net, or also known as Blizzard app, for the future. Yeah, I know, kind of weird, but yes, Destiny 2 is technically going to be part of the Blizzard DRM, which is currently known as Battle.net, but I believe it changed to Blizzard app. I don't know, people still call it Battle.net, so I'm calling it Battle.net. However, the PC version is coming at a later date than console. We don't know how much later, so it will not be September 8th. My guess is probably just a few months to iron out the kinks and whatnot. Hopefully get everything up and running, and hopefully to meet the standards of PC users, because, well, let's face it, PC users obviously have higher standards than console users. Bad news, and this is not 100% confirmed, but it's all but confirmed. Console will be locked to 30 frames per second. Destiny 1 was 30 frames per second, which it's not a change, but it is kind of a letdown. A lot of people were hoping for 60 frames per second on console, but I imagine the reason that it can't achieve 30 FPS is because they are prioritizing visuals over frame rate, and while I'm assuming things like the Scorpio and the PS4 Pro can achieve 60 frames per second, the problem is it's on the same ecosystem as the original PS4 and original Xbox One, which probably can't handle 60 frames per second at the fidelity that Bungie wants. I think it's a shame. I honestly would prefer to have frame rate over fidelity, but it seems like that's the direction they're going to take. So, a little bit of a shame, but I also think that has more to do with the competitive scene, and based on what we're seeing, it looks like competitive scene is probably going to be exclusive to PC anyway, with the way that Bungie's been pushing it. So, let's talk about story. Yeah, that thing Destiny 1 didn't have? Yeah, well, Destiny 2 has a story. Now, to be fair, Destiny 1 did have a story. It was just locked away in grimoire cards or extra lore that you had to go onto a website. Well, this time they're not doing that. This time they are having a fully cinematic campaign. Yes, they stress that, cinematic campaign. Whether you like cutscenes or not, there's going to be a lot of them this time. A lot more cinematics, a lot more CGI, a lot more voice acting, on a lot more character development. Specifically around the Vanguard characters, Zavala, Cade, and Ikora, as well as a couple other extra characters. And kind of just a brief summary on the story for those who don't already know, but it's mostly been talked about anyway, even in prior trailers, is we lose all our stuff. Yes, the tower gets destroyed, the city gets destroyed, the Traveler gets basically captured. It doesn't actually go anywhere, but it gets captured. We lose our powers, at least in some form or another. And I don't know if we lose it all 100%, but yeah, everyone gets scattered, and we have to try to rally the human race and Awoken and Exo races back together to try to reclaim our home from the Cabal, or more specifically the Red Legion, which is a subset of the Cabal race led by Gaul, Dominus Gaul, who is the leader of that entire legion, and he is here to take the Traveler because he believes that the Traveler is owed to him and not to humanity, not to the Awoken, not to the Exos. It is owed to him, and he wants to take it away from us. We are simply an obstacle in his way in terms of domination. That's the story. Very simple. I mean, obviously there's going to be a lot more to it. Now, again, Destiny's very lore heavy, so we're going to see how that all ties in as we go, but that is the basic summary. So, let's move on to our abilities that we're going to have in this game. So, one of the first things they showed off is that we do have new supers. Now, it wasn't really clarified whether or not these are new supers for the certain subclasses, because they're not adding a new element to the game. The Warlocks have another solar super. The Titans have another Void Super, and the Hunters have another Arc Super. It's not really explicitly detailed whether these are new supers added onto those subclasses, which may or may not be completely overhauled, or if they are new subclasses entirely. I did see elements of old subclasses within them, such as the Warlock Firebolt Grenade was still there, even for this new subclass, which is known as the Dawnblade for the Warlock, where you basically have a sword and you can hit things with it or send fire out with it and destroy things that way. Pretty freaking cool. The Titans have the Sentinel class or super. Again, I'm not sure if it's an entirely new subclass or just another super for that subclass, which is basically you get a shield and you can just start chucking it around Captain America style, bouncing it off of enemies and killing them that way, which is pretty freaking sweet. And then there's the Arc Strider, which is you get an electrical staff and you get to wield that thing and start taking out enemies with it. Again, very cool, although there were criticisms that it's very similar to the Blade Dancer, but again, we don't know how that's going to turn out. There's also a third ability this time. In Destiny 1, you had your two abilities were your grenade and melee. This time there's a third one, which is done by holding down the crouch button, which was circle on PS4 and B on Xbox One. And for the Warlock, for the Dawnblade, at least as far as we know, there's a rift. You can basically put down a healing spot, which either, depending on how you spec it, yeah, you can stand in it and it heals you, but you can't move, or it increases your DPS while standing in it. For the Titan, they get a miniature barrier or wall they get to stick up in front of them. And for who knows how long, how much health, I don't know. And then the Hunters, they get essentially what is a roll or a shade, similar to Shade Step, which is what the Night Stalker subclass had in Destiny 1. Other little add-ons to these abilities is that, well, Warlock and Titan skating have been removed here in Destiny 2. They deliberately removed those. Now, for those who don't know what that is, in Destiny 1, they were technically movement exploits. Not kind of as a skill cap, but kind of as just an advantage. Technically, Warlocks and Titans are supposed to be the slower subclass, or slower classes in comparison to Hunters. Hunters are just supposed to have a basic, for the most part, faster movement speed and a faster jump, but because of a certain exploit you could use with the way that your ability, your jumps had you burst into the air, you were able to exploit that, especially with the Titan, to move around much, much, much faster, thus giving you an advantage in PvP and whatnot. Well, that's been completely removed. You can no longer exploit that in Destiny 2. Going on to the weapons, quite a bit to talk about here, actually. So snipers and shotguns and fusion rifles, all of these were special weapons in Destiny 1, have been moved to the heavy slot, which are now called power weapons. On top of that, they've also added grenade launchers to the power weapons slot. So rocket launchers, machine guns, grenade launchers, snipers, shotguns, and fusions are all power weapons. These are much more limited in their ammo quantity, but are no less powerful, if not even more powerful than before. And they are specifically meant to be there because they all have one-shot potential in PvP. Yes, snipers, shotguns, and fusions all have that. That's how it was in Destiny 1, and so they wanted to limit that to make it so that the time to kill in Destiny 2 wasn't as, I wouldn't say constantly insane, because when you got into regular primary fights, it was actually much slower than most shooters, but because of the nature of so many one-shot weapons, it could fluctuate like crazy. Sometimes it would be insanely slow for a time to kill on average, and then other times you would die instantly without even having a chance to react, just at random. So they're trying to balance that by making all of these power weapons. However, they are now changing up the way that special weapons work and are instead giving us primaries and energy weapons. Now, basically, from what I gathered and the way that they kind of explained it, is that primaries and energy weapons are all the same thing. They are auto rifles, they are scout rifles, pulse rifles, hand cannons, sidearms, SMGs, all these different weapons. However, your primary weapon does not have an element to it. It's just kinetic damage, basic damage, but then you can equip one of those in your energy weapon slot, thus giving it an element to it, void, arc, or solar, thus being able to take down shields and or apply to burns and whatnot, which is pretty cool. And of course, we're getting new exotic weapons and armor. That's pretty sweet, but I mean, that was kind of a given anyway. Moving on to the modes. Well, actually, first, let's talk about the worlds, okay? So, we got some new worlds in this game, obviously. Now, I don't know if we're going to be able to return to any of the worlds from Destiny 1. I don't know if we're going to be able to go back to the Moon, Venus, Mars, or Old Russia in on Earth. But what we do have is the European Dead Zone, which we have seen in Destiny 1. It's a much more of a green, kind of rundown, post-apocalyptic looking area, as opposed to the kind of desert tundra wasteland that we had in the Cosmodrome in Destiny 1. It's a lot more lush, a lot more, definitely kind of almost has that Horizon Zero Dawn feel to it, I think. And that is going to be kind of where our hub space is. That is where humanity has stopped after leaving the city, which has now been destroyed. That is where they're rebuilding. Essentially where our new quote-unquote tower is going to be. Then the other worlds that were shown off are Nessus, Titan, and Io. Nessus is a Vex machine world, much like Mercury, and to a lesser extent, the Black Garden and Venus. For those who don't know, in Destiny 1, the Vex are an alien race that basically they convert worlds into machine planets after they've eaten at it and destroyed it enough. And it sort of takes on this very metallic machine architecture to it. Now, Nessus does have other things going on in it, and there's still remnants of another planet that are still underneath it all, but for the most part, it has been almost entirely turned into a machine-looking planet. Then there's Titan, which is like a water planet, almost entirely. They say it's methane, liquid methane, but it's a water planet. The entire thing is just a giant facility that's kind of collapsing but has been constructed over the water. Think like Camino in the Star Wars universe. It's just a bunch of buildings and structures on stilts over a gigantic ocean that encompasses the entire planet, or I guess in Titan's case, moon. And then there's Io, which is sort of similar in a way kind of to Venus in Destiny 1. However, it's completely untouched by humanity, well, almost completely untouched by humanity, and aliens, in fact. Apparently it's held sacred by the Guardians and whatnot. And although it does have a little bit more of a desert feel to it, it's still got that jungle vibe that Venus had in Destiny 1. So they're also adding a deeper patrol mission type to the game. So they're adding things such as adventures, which are basically you can find characters out in your patrols and you can start certain missions with them and whatnot, which is pretty cool. And then you can also start other things called lost sectors, which are essentially dungeons. You can just find a dungeon while you're out in patrol and dive into the dungeon, get the loot inside, and you have to fight a boss to do it and all that. But those are just some of the many things that they're adding to make patrol missions more engaging, because all they were in Destiny 1 are scattered little missions you can grab, like, oh, kill this many of this enemy, or grab the components that are dropped from this enemy, or go scan this location. No, they're trying to make it a lot more involved and detailed, which leads me actually to one of the biggest quality of life improvements added to the game, and that is the fact that you do not have to return to orbit to access the director anymore. You can be in game and you can just select where you want to go next, and the game's going to warp you right over there. No more returning to orbit for everything, which honestly was a big setback in Destiny 1, having to return to orbit to go to the tower, having to return to orbit to do this and this and this. No more having to do that. I'm assuming they still have the orbit function there, but you don't need to use it. And I'll get into other quality of life changes in a minute, but the last thing I want to go over before that is the PvP in this game. So they've completely redesigned the Crucible. In Destiny 1, there were 6v6 modes, 3v3 modes, 2v2 modes, free-for-all modes, all sorts of different kind of stuff. Apparently, in Destiny 2, all modes are going to be 4 versus 4, which, for a lot of games outside of Destiny, is a very standard competitive set. Not all games, but for a lot of games. I believe CS:GO is a game that kind of popularized that. And map design is been kind of revamped and overhauled so that they don't have to worry about trying to tailor map design to specific modes, so that a map is strong for one mode but not for another. No, they want to work around just the 4v4 aspect so that map design can achieve parity across all modes. On top of that, in PvP, abilities come up less often. A lot less ability spam like there is in Destiny 1. You don't get your grenades as much. Melees are less effective. They now take 3 hits to kill instead of 2 like they did in Destiny 1. They're also adding an attack defense mode, which is interesting because Well, let's be honest, all modes in Destiny 1 were just attack in some way or another. Just attack, attack, attack. You could argue that the Rift mode was sort of attack defense, but this is actually controlling an objective, setting up, attacking, defending, working in a team like that. And as always, Destiny is very, very movement-based, so it'll be interesting to see how that works. There's also the power ammo crates, which spawn every 25 seconds, is I believe what I read from somewhere. 25 seconds, a power armor crate pops up, and you can pull it for your sniper, shotgun, fusion, rocket launcher, whatever. However, only one person can pull it. It's not like in Destiny 1, where if you pull heavy and anyone within a certain radius can get that ammo. Same with special. No. Person pulls it, only they get it. And then another little thing that I saw that got added is that sticky grenades, which have been the bane of a lot of people's existence in Destiny 1, including myself, no longer kill somebody in one shot. And then, unfortunately, bad news, but from what I've heard, it's basically confirmed that there will not be dedicated servers in Destiny 2. That's kind of a big one, though. I don't know if that's going to hold over very well for a lot of people, but we'll have to wait and see how it actually turns out, or if they've made other improvements, because it's not impossible to achieve a stable PvP environment without dedicated servers. I think Titanfall 2 is actually a very good example of that. It just depends on how you manage your servers and whatnot. Even if you do make it peer-to-peer, you have to find workarounds and compromises, and you don't always need dedicated servers, but it definitely does make things a lot easier. And then last but not least, let's go over to the UI and quality of life changes that, at least that we've seen thus far. So one of the big things that they stressed is that there is going to be an official clan system. Yes, official clan support. In Destiny 1, all the clan really was just a kind of a subtitle underneath your gamer tag. That's all it really was. Kind of showed that you were there together. Towards the end of the game's life cycle, they finally added an actual tab where you could go through all your clan members, see if they're online, invite them into stuff, but really nothing beyond that. This time they have an official clan system where your clan can actually level up by doing certain things, get achievements. You actually can get rewards for playing a certain amount or doing certain things in it, and the rewards are for your entire clan, not just for yourself. And one of the big things, and a big criticism of Destiny 1, was that in Destiny 1, raids and nightfalls, the real endgame activities, Trials of Osiris, were not there was no matchmaking involved. Now, the way Bungie kind of explained that they avoided doing this in Destiny 1 was because of the toxicity that can happen in such high-level and difficult environments with complete strangers. And it makes sense, because people can get incredibly toxic when they're under a lot of stress, especially if they don't know each other. So this time, to work around that, while still not completely giving us the full matchmaking experience, they're adding something called guided games, which is essentially a clan Sherpa experience. Now, it's not perfect from what I can tell already, but it is definitely something. So what it is basically a matchmaking system for solo players, where instead of just being matched with random players, they get to basically look for clans that are available, that are recruiting for a certain endgame activity. And they can kind of go over like what the clan is, who's in the clan. They can see what the clan's about and kind of that kind of stuff, just to kind of give them an idea of what they're in for before they match up with said clan. And it basically allows clans to, if, like, let's say they have 5 people for a raid instead of a 6th, then they can just recruit one player and help bring them through the raid and whatnot. It's essentially a type of matchmaking, but it's not, you know, it's not just straight matchmaking. It's kind of a workaround, while allowing them to do the matchmaking, but also trying to avoid that awful solo queue environment that we experience so much in multiplayer games. And then last but not least, from what I saw, is they're also adding, a lore section in the game this time, finally, to the menus, to the UI. Now, from the way it sounds, it looks like it's going to be kind of similar to just kind of a rollover of an item, and what you can do is you can basically click the button, like a left bumper or whatever it is, in your game, and then it's going to bring up like a page with lore on said item or something like that. So basically you can read the Grimoire cards in-game. And honestly, that is something that needed to be done. Guys, where do I even start with this? Destiny 2 is looking so freaking awesome. It looks so good. I am incredibly excited. I am definitely going to be getting this game on launch. I'm definitely going to be playing the beta. Going to be right there grabbing footage, uploading it here, going to be showing it to you guys, and I want to kind of follow the game as we go. So, yes, we're jumping back into Destiny 2 on this channel. Well, back into Destiny with Destiny 2 on this channel. Now, I am going to be doing most of my focus on PS4, not because I mean, part of because I want to, but I would rather get 60 frames per second gameplay. My only problem is, I don't think my PC is going to be able to handle this. I know that's kind of a sad thing to say, but for crying out loud, my PC can barely run Overwatch on minimum settings. It's until I'm able to get a really nice graphics card, I will not be able to do anything PC related for Destiny 2 for quite some time. So I am going to be covering this on PS4, but I'm okay with that. I think that's going to be fun. I have a lot of friends I'm going to be able to play with for Destiny 2 that are pretty excited as well. And I can't wait to jump in and go over everything once again. I can't wait to jump back into this new Destiny experience. I'm still playing Destiny 1 to this day, and I love it, but it looks like Destiny 2 is going to be a huge step up from Destiny 1. Oh, guys, I'm so excited. It looks so freaking good. It looks so good. It looks so fun. Oh, can't wait to do this again. Guys, thank you all so very, very much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed this very much. Look ahead to more Destiny content coming up on this channel here in the near future. And I will see you all in the next one.